Today, Thursday, July the 15th, we celebrate the feast of one of the great theologians in the history of the Church, the Franciscan Saint Bonaventure. He is presented here in the St. Anthony Chapel of the Cathedral in the mosaic next to the Order's founder, St. Francis. Giovanni di Fidanza was born in 1221, 800 years ago, near the beautiful Umbrian city of Orvieto. He became a Franciscan in 1243 and took the name Bonaventure. St. Francis had died some dozen years before, but already his order was rapidly changing the Church. To Bonaventure, it seemed that the order, quote, was not invented by human providence, but by Christ. In it the learned and the simple lived as brethren, unquote. Francis had held learning in great esteem, as long as it was subordinated to the pursuit of holiness. In this spirit, Bonaventure's intellectual gifts were soon recognized, and he was sent to Paris to continue his studies. In 1257, along with his Dominican counterpart, Thomas Aquinas, he received his doctorate in theology. He was more Augustinian than Aristotelian, unlike his contemporary. He emphasized an affective over a rational approach to the study of the divine mysteries. For him, the purpose of human knowledge was not to speculate, but to love. Those seeking God, he wrote, pass through three states: purification, illumination, and union with God, leading to the sweetness of love. Rather than serve as academic theologian, he was immediately elected at the age of 36 to serve as Minister General of the Friars. A critical time, he had to contend with internal dissension within the community. On the one hand, the spirituals insisted on strict adherence to Francis's spirit of poverty and were somewhat loose in organization. On the other hand, were those who desired a more practical attitude toward property and the requirements of institutional life. Bonaventure sought a middle course, establishing a balance between radical freedom and the disciplined order of a religious community. To reinforce his moderate interpretation of the Franciscan charism, he composed an influential life of St. Francis. So successful was Bonaventure in establishing the direction of the Franciscans, he was later known as the second founder. Bonaventure did manage to write a number of important works. His most influential book was The Journey of the Mind to God, written during a retreat in 1259. It was composed on Mount Alvernia, where St. Thomas had received the stigmata, which is the mark of his personal identification with the crucified Christ. This book was an attempt to translate Francis's experience into philosophical terms. It traces the soul's journey along the path of holiness, leading from contemplation of the created world to an ever-deepening contemplation of the spiritual order, and ultimately progressing toward the goal of mystical union with God. He wrote, quote, "If you ask how such things can occur, seek the answer in God's grace, not in doctrine, in the longing of will, not in the understanding, in the sighs of prayer, not in research. Seek the bridegroom, not the teacher, God and not man, darkness, not daylight, and look not to the light, but rather to the raging fire that carries the soul to God with intense fervor and glowing love," unquote. Bonaventure himself was a model of humility and charity. In 1265, Pope Clement IV wished to name him Archbishop of York in England, an appointment he respectfully declined. In 1273, however, Pope Gregory X ordered him to accept the title of Cardinal Bishop of Albano. It is said that when papal legates were sent to present him with his red hat and other insignia of office, he kept them waiting while he finished washing the dishes. In a summary of his spirituality, he observed, "The perfection of a religious person is to do common things in a perfect manner, and a constant fidelity in small matters is great and heroic virtue." Bonaventure took a leading part in the Second Council of Lyon, convened to seek ways of healing the division between the churches of East and West. He died there on this date, July the 15th, 1274, while the council was still in session. He was canonized in 1482 and declared a doctor of the church in 1588. And in recognition of his angelic virtue, he is known as the Seraphic Doctor. Coincidentally, he is also a patron saint of workers. Here in the St. Anthony Chapel of the cathedral, its second founder is presented at the south end of the striking mosaics of the early Franciscans, next to the first founder of the Franciscans. In the U.S., St. Bonaventure's is the Franciscan University in New York, dedicated to his honor. Its well-known and respected alumnus, fire chaplain Michael Judge, was the initial victim of the 9/11 destruction of the World Trade Center. The California mission, San Bonaventura, north of Los Angeles, early on was also named in the saint's honor, and the city now more popularly known by its shortened name as Ventura. Good St. Bonaventure, help us grow in awareness of God's love.